Hey y'all, I'm back in the kitchen today. It's another cold January day out there. I think it may be up to 18 today. I'm sorry, it's not January. Today's February the 1st, and I'm glad because that means that spring is closer and closer. We're through January, and I'm thankful. Anyhow, I wanted to make a German chocolate cake today. Now, it's my favorite cake. I'm not a big cake lover, but this is my favorite. My grandmother used to ask me what cake I wanted for my birthday, and I always said German chocolate, and more so for the coconut pecan frosting than the cake. But, anywho, we're going to make it homemade today. No store-bought frosting for me, not on this cake. But I am using a Betty Crocker cake mix today. I'm going to use that. And so I have dusted, I have greased, and I've dusted my pans with cocoa rather than flour since it's a chocolate cake. I have the 3 round pans. We're going to try to do that today. I'm going to make 3 small, 3 thinner cakes because I like a lot of frosting, and this recipe makes a lot of frosting, and I believe that I'll have enough to go on 3, and so it doesn't run down the cake too bad. Sometimes I make it in a sheet pan just so I can dump all that frosting on top of that and not have to worry about losing any of it or making a mess for it running down the cake. So anyhow, let's get started on making a cake. Welcome to Stony Creek, located in wild and wonderful southern West Virginia, here in the heart of Appalachia, nestled between the Allegheny and the Blue Ridge Mountains. Join us as we explore a culture rich in history and historical landmarks, cooking mid-Appalachian style, gardening, DIY projects, and back porch sitting. Okay, as I said, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use a cake mix today. Betty Crocker's my favorite. I think that her cake mixes are much moister and better than the other brands. So I try to buy Betty Crocker's. And like I said, most of my cakes I honestly make now from scratch. But there are a few, sometimes a white cake maybe occasionally, and like the German chocolate, because I don't keep German chocolate in stock to make it. So I do buy the cake mix for it. So we'll start with that. I've got all the ingredients out here that we need. Pour our cake mix in our bowl. Hope everyone is staying warm and safe. I mean, it's just been a brutal January all across the United States. The Weather Channel, the evening news just, just continuously say how brutal the weather is out there, and it is. It is here in West Virginia, so I know it is elsewhere as well. It's been difficult to stay warm. The wind was blowing last night, and when I went to bed, it was down to 11. I'm not sure what it was when Tim got up this morning, but it's just been brutal here. Okay, so it calls for 1 cup of water, but I use milk. Sometimes I even use buttermilk. I'm not today. This is just whole milk. We'll put 1 cup of the milk in. Calls for a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. There's our oil. And it calls for 3 eggs. Now we're going to just try to do one at a time if I can. Mix it up. And come back and add the other ones in. I'd love if you drop in the comments where you're at, what part of the country you're at, and how your weather has been there. I'd love to hear it. See how you've been getting along with it. It's just been brutal here. We let our dog in and keep her inside because it's just so cold when she's out. Okay, let's add 1 more egg. Okay. Cake mixes are a good way for somebody that's just starting to cook, someone's just wanting to learn how to cook. You can buy the cake mixes and follow the directions on the back of the box, and it's a good way to get started with your baking. I remember when I was about 6 years old, I think, I got an easy bake oven for Christmas one year, and I can remember making my dad a little chocolate cake in that little oven. He ate it. All right, that looks mixed pretty good. All right, let's get this off the beaters. Scrape down our bowl. If we need to, if we find we have a lot of flour on the side of the bowl and we need to beat it some more, this is the time to do that. That looks pretty good though, from here. Now, the tricky part is going to be getting the cake poured evenly in all 3 tins. So, let's see what we can do here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, again, these are going to be thin layers. No question about it. But we're going to give it a try and see how it turns out today. Try to spread it out evenly in my pan so that the cakes do come out evenly. As even as possible. Okay. All right. Now, so these are not going to need to bake nearly as long as the directions say on the box, because we've you know, thinned the rest of the cake mix down by putting it in 3 different pans. So it says here for 2 9-inch rounds, 23 to 28 minutes. So we have 3. So I'm going to start looking to see if this is done in about 15 minutes. So let's get it in the oven. Okay, the cakes are about ready. I'm going to test one and let's see how close they are to being done, because they're very thin. They don't need to bake very long. So let's test one. Not quite. It didn't come out clean. So leave them just a minute more. I've got our ingredients here to make our frosting. And going back to the time when my grandmother would make this for me for my birthday. My birthday's May 31st. My grandfather's is May 27th. So we usually celebrated together every year. He would have his cake and I would have mine. She'd make 2. And the whole family would be there. And my gracious, do I miss those times? Because there's no one left. My parents are gone. All my grandparents are gone. I have 2 brothers. They both live away from here. I have 2 daughters that have their own lives, and 5 grandchildren that have their own lives. So it's just so different than it was. It was a family thing, and everybody came and everybody showed up, and we were family at that time. And that's before there were divorces and new people moving into the family, and the family dynamics change, and they don't like the family and don't want to join in and don't want to invite you, and that's how it goes. So my whole family dynamic has changed drastically. To say that I grieve over the loss of my family is an understatement. I grieve terribly over my family. And I know that the Bible tells us we'll see them again if they're in heaven. And I pray and feel that most of my family were Christians and knew the right way. So, but anyhow, I do grieve and miss my family terrible. We would just have family dinners on Sundays and didn't even need an excuse like a birthday or a holiday. But that's the way it goes. So let's check on these cakes again. Almost. I don't want them on making this delicious frosting. They turned out really nice. They're not too dry and too done around the edges. Again, like I said, if you're just new to cooking, young, you want to start learning how to cook, or if you're older and want to start cooking now, using the cake mix is the way to get started, I think. Start out with just a simple cake. Follow the directions. And you'll come out with a delicious cake. You'll learn how to make them. My girls were not into cooking at all. They just don't have the desire whatsoever. Okay, I'm going to turn, this side gets a little hot, so I'm going to just turn it slightly below medium. The recipe calls for 1.5 sticks of butter, which is 3/4 of a cup. There's our one stick. Let's cut the other one in half. Okay. And again, I'm going to preach to myself about organization, because at the last minute, I thought of 2 things that I might not have had and had to run around here real quick to find it. So again, organization when you're cooking. It really, really does help. Take it from someone who's not been organized until recently. I'm learning to be, but I was not. I was haphazard. I did this and ran over here and got that ingredient and went in there and found one out of the refrigerator or the freezer. I mean, I was running around like a chicken with their head cut off. Not organized at all. So I've even made a cake and not even had the pan greased and floured yet. Yeah, so when I preach organization, I'm talking to myself, and I'm telling you, it is a major step in cooking, and it really helps to be organized. Okay, so we have our butter in our pan. It's melting, 3/4 of a cup of butter. It calls for 1 can, 12 ounces of evaporated milk. And please do use the evaporated milk. This is not the sweetened condensed milk. This is just evaporated milk that you buy in cans. It does make a difference. Fresh milk won't taste the same. Buttermilk won't taste the same. The sweetened condensed definitely won't taste the same. So you want to mix your milk and your butter and your sugar in a saucepan. Okay. Calls for 1.5 cups of sugar, white granulated sugar. Okay. And mix milk, sugar, margarine, egg yolks, and vanilla in a pan. They want the 4 egg yolks beaten slightly. These have been beaten slightly. I'm going to stir this up first before I dump the eggs in there. Get you a good sized soft pan because this will come to a rolling boil, and you want a pan where it won't boil over on your stove. Okay, I'm going to put in our 4 beaten egg yolks. Now, the reason for the egg yolks is this will thicken like a custard or a pudding as they cook. And that's what gives your frosting its thickening. So you want to get it in there before your mixture starts getting too warm or too hot, because otherwise you'll have to temper it, because they'll cook when you put them in the hot liquid if the liquid has already gotten hot. And this is not. My butter is not even melting yet. So in fact, I may turn it up just a hair. So that is an important step, to get your egg yolks in there. If you miss getting the egg yolks in before your liquid gets very hot, you'll have to temper it. Meaning that you'll take your eggs, take some of your liquid that's hot, and you'll mix it, and take a little more mixing, a little more liquid, and mix it until it's about the same temperature as this, and it won't cook real fast. You at least have time to get it stirred up. But if you put them in when your liquid is hot, they're going to cook on you. Don't want that. You want them to slowly cook and thicken. Stir them up good in your liquid so that it gets mixed very well. All right, and our vanilla. Let's see about our vanilla. It says 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. Okay. Also get you a good vanilla. A good vanilla makes a big difference in the flavoring of your cakes and pies and your sweets. Don't know what you got cooking at home today, but I've got some brown steak that I have tenderized, and I have rolled in seasoned flour and browned it, and then I'll put it in the slow cooker with onions to cook, and I'll make a gravy. We'll have some mashed potatoes this evening for our Sunday supper. My grandmother always cooked a good meal on Sundays. Always. It was either a chuck roast, which I love. She would have a chuck roast, potatoes and cornbread and green beans. And other days she would have chicken and noodles. We didn't have chicken and dumplings. Her noodles were homemade though. And what I have seen other people's noodles turn out to be, when I've seen other people make their dumplings, the flat dumplings, it's similar to her noodles. It's just that she actually rolled them out and they were long, and she dropped them in. That was delicious. And I can also remember going out in the woodshed with her down at the farm, and she would this particular day it was a rooster that she killed, and I remember she chopped the head of it off of that thing, flopped and flopped and flew around the inside of that woodshed like crazy. I'd never seen it before. It's the first time I'd watched her actually kill it, and it flopped and flopped and flopped around. I think now I know where the saying comes, running around like a chicken with your head cut off, because that's what happens. And then of course she dipped it in hot water, scalding, boiling hot water, pulled the feathers off, cleaned the skin, gutted it, cleaned it up, and then put it in the house. And she always soaked it in very cold salt water for a good while before she cooked it. And then she would boil it and make her broth and her noodles. But She would make homemade potato salad, and that's what I'll have to make one day because her dressing is a cooked dressing. It's not mayonnaise and mustard. It is a cooked dressing. That was one of our favorite things. And then the other, of course, was her fried chicken with mashed potatoes and green beans and a cucumber and onion salad. Oh my goodness, hot rolls, corn from the garden that she would freeze and then make cream corn. Oh my goodness, it just couldn't be beat. Those were the days. Those were the days. They were really good days, and I miss them terrible. So back to our frosting. Let's get back to stirring. It's starting to get some heat to it. All right, our butter's almost melted. Now we've got to bring this to a boil. Okay, cook and stir on medium heat about 12 minutes or until thickened and a golden brown. Remove from heat. Stir in your coconut and pecans. Beat until cool and of spreading consistency. Makes about 4 1/4 cups. Okay. Ours hasn't come to a boil yet. We need it to start boiling. And then we'll let it cook for about 12 minutes, it said. It doesn't really specify. Stir on medium heat about 12 minutes. It doesn't really specify 12 minutes after it comes to a boil, but we're not thick yet. We're not there yet, so we're going to cook it a little bit longer. It's not thickening yet. This also, evaporated milk and sugar and butter and vanilla, you could use brown sugar and end up with caramel. Cook this until it's caramel, a caramel sauce, and it's delicious. You can also make a butterscotch pudding the same way if you use brown sugar and evaporated milk, butter, and cook it like we're cooking this until it becomes thick with the eggs. Then you would have a butterscotch pie filling or pudding, butterscotch pudding. My dad loved it. He loved it. He loved butterscotch pies that my grandmother would make and the pudding. And that's another thing she had on her Sunday dinners. She always had cakes or pies. It was always a dessert. I'm not huge on desserts. I'm more of the meat and potatoes person. I'll take a second helping of potatoes and a piece of chicken, and I'll skip the cake and pies. But now, not everybody's like that. My dad, he liked the desserts too. And of course, Tim loves sweets. I can't keep enough sweets in the house for him. But this is my favorite, is the German chocolate cake. Second is my chocolate cake that I make, a recipe with ganache frosting on it. My favorite cookie are the chocolate chip lace cookies. I like them very thin and lacy. I don't like the cakey cookies. Okay, we're starting to come to a boil, so. You don't want this to scorch. Keep that in mind. That's why I keep stirring. I don't want it to scorch to the bottom of my pan and get a burnt taste to it. You got to work it. I do remember some old recipes. I had my grandmother's cookbooks, and someone that married my uncle asked to borrow them, and she would return them after she went through them, and of course she never returned them. But some of the older cookbooks, actually one of the directions were when it coats the back of the spoon. Now that still is running off to me, but it's getting really close to coating the back of the spoon, as some of the old-timey recipes That's how you could tell when it was ready. Okay, it's a golden brown. I've removed it from the heat. We're going to add in our coconut. It calls for 7 ounces of coconut. I have a little bit more because it needed to be used and I love it. So I'm going to add a little bit more than 7 ounces in mine. It also calls for 1.5 cups of chopped pecans. One and a half cups of chopped pecans. Okay. Now it says stir until thick. You see how much this makes? I mean, that's a lot of frosting. Okay, it's starting to thicken up some as it's cooling down. We're going to let it set just a minute while I get the cakes on the plate and we'll get ready and frost them. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to put pieces of wax paper, if I have enough, that we can pull out, but so that it keeps the frosting from running on the cake plate so bad. There's cake number 1. So we'll start with our frosting on this piece. And I believe the thickness turned out really good. Don't want those crumbs on the plate. Okay, cake number 2. It didn't take long in this cold weather for the cakes to cool down. Of course, I realize they're not very thick either, but it's just they've cooled off quicker than I can remember cakes cooling off. Frosting makes a lot, and that's a good thing because it's going to I'm gonna be able to use all of it. Okay, cake number 3. And the last of our frosting goes on the very top. Get all that goodness out of that pan. Oh my goodness. Now, doesn't that look pretty? And my favorite part, y'all, it's so good. You got to give it a try. It really is. It's so good. I'll put the description, with the recipe to the frosting in my description box, so that you can make this, because it's so good. You can eat it without even the cake. I hope you make it. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you're staying warm in this brutal cold weather. I love y'all. See you next time.